One man gets the patent, one man gets the credit, and one entire continent gets erased. This is the story of how a device that changed ranching forever was stolen from the people who invented it, and how the theft became history. In the early 1800s, according to census records and shipping manifests, thousands of enslaved and free Africans from Senegambia, present-day Senegal and Gambia, arrived in Argentina. Specifically, historical records show that between 1800 and 1806, approximately 2,175 Senegambians were brought to the Pampas. Many of them experienced herders who knew how to manage cattle across vast, dry grasslands. These weren't random laborers, they were specialists. They understood the ecology of moving animals through arid land. They understood water. They understood survival. When Argentina won independence from Spain in 1818 and opened new export markets, ranching exploded across the Pampas. But there was a problem. The herds were expanding into pastures farther and farther from permanent water sources. Workers were dying. Animals were dying. Thousands of head of cattle were being lost to dehydration. According to historian Andrew Sluyter in his book Black Ranching Frontiers, the challenge was familiar to the Senegambians. It was the same problem they had solved for centuries in the Sahel, the semi-arid region of West Africa, where they had driven cattle across vast distances during the dry season. Then it happened. An African water-lifting device appeared on the Pampas. It was called the balde sin fondo, the bottomless bucket, and it was revolutionary. The device was elegant in its simplicity. It used a large calfskin bucket open at both ends with 2 ropes attached. A thick rope lifted it from the well. A thin rope held the bottom closed until the bucket emerged from the mouth of the well and could spill water into a flume that discharged into a drinking trough. According to contemporary accounts, a single worker on horseback, even a child, could use a bottomless bucket to water 2,000 head of cattle in 8 hours. It lifted 3 times as much water with each stroke as the colonial hand-pulled buckets that had preceded it. It transformed Argentine ranching overnight. But here's where history becomes something darker. In 1826, a Spanish settler named Vicente Lanuza filed a patent application claiming he invented the bottomless bucket. According to the official government record, the Argentine government granted him exclusive manufacturing rights for 4 years. Nobody questioned him. Nobody investigated. Nobody seemed to know or care that Africans had used nearly identical water-lifting devices for centuries across a belt stretching from India to Morocco and southward through the Sahel. For nearly 150 years, the story held. According to the historical record, it was Carlos Pellegrini, the head of Argentina's Office of Industrial Patents, who cemented the lie in 1853 when he published Lanuza's claim in an article titled Revista del Plata. It became conventional wisdom. Hundreds of agricultural, environmental, and economic historians repeated it. University textbooks taught it. Museums displayed it. The story of Lanuza spread across the world. A Spaniard's genius, a white man's innovation, another example of European superiority. But what if that's not what happened? What if a Senegambian herder, someone who had driven cattle across the Sahel during dry seasons, someone whose knowledge was worth millions but whose name was worth nothing, simply built what they had always built? And what if Lanuza, seeing its efficiency, simply used his social power, his whiteness, his legal standing, his access to government, to appropriate it as his own? Historian Andrew Sluyter examined the evidence. No direct documentary evidence exists that Lanuza independently invented the bottomless bucket other than his own claim in a patent application where he hoped to derive financial benefit. Meanwhile, Senegambian herders who worked on those ranches between 1800 and 1806 were certainly familiar with nearly identical buckets common in the Sahel. The likelihood, according to Sluyter, is that one or more enslaved Africans built the first bottomless bucket based on their prior knowledge, and Lanuza appropriated the design. But proving it now is almost impossible. Why? Because Argentina's political leaders didn't just steal the invention, they stole the people. After 1810, according to historical analysis, the African population of Buenos Aires fell from nearly 10,000 to just 8,000 by 1887. They were consciously erased. Liberal elites like Pellegrini and Domingo Faustino Sarmiento characterized Rosas and his black, gaucho, and indigenous supporters as backwards. They promoted Argentina as white, European, modern, progressive. The entire historical narrative was constructed to erase African contribution. So the bottomless bucket became Spanish. African genius became European invention. The device that saved Argentine ranching belongs in history books to a man who almost certainly stole it. This is not an ancient story. This is not something that happened 1,000 years ago. This happened 200 years ago. This happened within living memory. And it shows you something critical. The erasure of African contribution to the Americas wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. It was systematic. It was political. Comment below. What innovation do you think has been wrongfully credited to someone else? Share this because the people who built the modern world need to be remembered, not forgotten. Subscribe to Ekmafuna History TV because we're uncovering the stolen stories, the appropriated genius, the people history erased so completely that we forgot they were ever there. Help us keep these truths alive.